Welcome back to DRS Dispatch, and I watched all of Formula 1 so you don't have to. Today I watched the 1950 Belgium Grand Prix, so let's get right into it. So the 1950 Belgium Grand Prix of course took place in the endlessly iconic Spa-Francorchamps. This was on the 18th of June 1950, just a couple of weeks after the Swiss Grand Prix, and it was of course round 5 of the Formula 1 season in 1950, and yeah, as I said, took place in Spa, with all the corners that you still recognize, like Eau Rouge, Raidillon, the Camel Straight, Le Combe. I don't recognize Bernonville, but obviously Stavelot, La Carrière, Blanchemont, La Source. These are all corners that are still in the modern Spa track. And of course, if you know anything about Formula 1, which I'm assuming you do because you're watching this channel, Spa is still a very famous circuit that we still go to pretty regularly, though from next year onwards I think it's going to be a bi-yearly track, meaning that we're unfortunately not going to see it every year, which is a massive shame, FIA, because Spa is probably my favorite circuit on the calendar, and it's just endlessly iconic. We just love Spa. We love Spa. Spa's great. Obviously, there's the iconic Eau Rouge corner back in 1950, though I guarantee they probably didn't take it at full throttle like they did last year, or for last year's regulations, Formula 1 regulations. And yeah, very similar track, though of course it's changed significantly over the years with the passing of time. But first, let's talk about it. So the 1950 Belgium Grand Prix was of course the 5th of 7 total 1950 races, and by the time of the Belgium Grand Prix, it's important to note that the pace of the season was beginning to tell, with only a total of 14 cars arriving at the Spa circuit. This is in comparison to the 33 cars that I think took place in the British Grand Prix, though the British Grand Prix was only in, I think, March, I want to say. So it's only been a few months, but certainly because it's a very early part of Formula 1, just a lot of cars were not able to make it. It's also important to note that in 1950, traveling and getting the cars to the circuit would have been a lot more of a challenge than it is today, whereas today you can just throw them all on a plane and away you go. But it would have been more expensive, and it would have been just overall like more of a challenge in 1950. It's also important to note that a large, probably significant reason as to why this was the case is because a large proportion of the grid was self-funded. So it's the case that a lot of these self-funded manufacturers probably just ran out of money, and because it was more difficult and more expensive to get the cars to the circuit, they just weren't able to show up here. So yeah. But these 14 cars included the Alfa Romeos of Nino Farina, Juan Manuel Fangio, and Luigi Fagioli. The Ferraris was down 2 125s for Luigi Villaressi, and the Ferraris were down to 2 races, that being Luigi Villaressi and Alberto Ascari. Though Ascari had a new V12 engine to try out, so I wonder how that will go. Foreshadowing. The factory Talbot Lago team had 3 cars for Louis Rosier, Yves Giraud-Cabatus, and Philippe Etron-Céline, who were standing in for the injured Eugene Martin, who of course had that terrible crash in Monaco. Was it Monaco? It might have been the Swiss Grand Prix. I misremember. The rest of the field was made up mainly of Talbot Lagos, notably one Raymond Sommer, a single Alta, and one Maserati for Tony Branca, with a large proportion of the independent manufacturers essentially not taking place, because the truth is they'd probably just simply ran out of money, because that's just how it was back in the day. This race was also the final entry for Geoffrey Crossley, the sport's high costs ultimately forcing him and many other privateers to retire after just a handful of races. Yeah, there also just generally wasn't as much money in racing back in the day. It was very much more of not a hobby per se, but it wasn't as much of a lifestyle as it is today. Though, of course, if you raced for a factory team like Talbot Lago or Alfa Romeo or Ferrari, of course you were going to be taking place in the race. So yeah, let's talk about qualifying, with Farina and Fangio ultimately being fastest as usual in qualifying, with Fagioli unable to match them. Sommer was able to split the Ferraris in his old Talbot Lago, so shout out Sommer. And of course in P1 we have Nino Farina, followed by Juan Manuel Fangio, Luigi Fagioli, Luigi Villaressi, Raymond Sommer, Philippe Etron-Céline, Alberto Ascari, Louis Rosier, Yves Giraud-Cabatus, Pierre Lever in P10, with Johnny Claes in the Talbot Lago ultimately not being able to put a time up. So yeah, Nino Farina and Fangio were still fastest, Fagioli lagging behind a little bit. And yeah, the Ferraris being split by the Talbot Lagers. So yeah, let's talk about the race. So the race would ultimately prove to be a similar story, where the Alphas went off on their own and Summer ultimately battled with the two Ferraris. When the Alfa Romeos stopped for fuel, Summer found himself in the unlikely position of being the race leader, though unfortunately his engine would blow up partway through the race, which meant he retired, sadly. So it would have been interesting to see him win the race. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Ascari then took the lead, but he ultimately had to stop for fuel, and that meant the Alfa Romeos went ahead, again with Fangio leading Farina and Fagioli. Farina would ultimately suffer a transmission problem in the closing laps and drop to 4th behind the rest of the surviving Talbot Lagos, being driven by Rossier. Ascari ultimately would finish 5th at the end of the race. So that's pretty much it. The only 35 lap race was won by Juan Manuel Fangio, as after he had started from 2nd position. His teammate Luigi Fagioli finished 2nd, and Talbot Lago driver Luis Rossier came in 3rd ultimately. So yeah, Fangio was able to win this race, one of the, I think, like 3 races that he didn't retire from. But spoilers, future race spoilers. With only 2 rounds left, it certainly seems like the competition is heating up between the Alphas. An overall solid result for Luis Rossier, a really great result as well for Luis Rossier in the Talbot Lago. It's a shame Ascari suffered that transmission problem, or else he might have finished higher up, really. And yeah, overall there was only a total of 10 finishes, with Luigi Villaresi, Pierre Lever, Johnny Clares, Geoffrey Crossley, and Tony Branca rounding out the top 10, with some retirees from all of the Talbot Lagos, which is a shame for them. Though they did make up a significant proportion of the grid. So yeah, 3 out of 7 finishes is not a fantastic result for them, but it's better than nothing. So yeah. Overall, that was a pretty uneventful, all things considered, Belgium Grand Prix. But now let's get into the championship standings, where Nino Farina, Luigi Fagioli, and Juan Manuel Fangio remain unchanged, with Nino Farina leading with a total of 22 points, but we'll see how that goes. Luis Rossier was able to jump 2 positions with 10 points, jumping into 4th place, with Johnny Parsons dropping down into 5th place, though as per usual, it's important to note that Johnny Parsons only raced in the 1950 Indianapolis Grand Prix. So yeah, next up is a race that we don't see these days, the 1950 French Grand Prix, so that's exciting. So that was the 1950 Belgium Grand Prix. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for next week for the 1950 French Grand Prix. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment section down below if there's any other races you want me to cover, and I hope you have a great, wonderful day. So bye for now. Peace.